People who have been catfished. What was your "oh crap" moment? So for me, it was when I was a teenager. Not too long after the birth of ICQ, I had met this one person in a chat room, and things started to get more and more personal. Not too long later, they eventually broke down and admitted that they had been lying, and that they weren't young and hot and a girl, but instead a man. The guy seemed really remorseful, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I actually wasn't a young, hot lesbian either. Next story. Oh boy, this is gonna be a fun story. I used to be on Omegle, a chat website, a few times when I was 17 or so. Everyone asked for age and sex, male and female, and most of them would disconnect when you said you were a male. So at one point, I told people I was female just to be able to talk to people. Anyway, I connected to a girl and we had a great time together. We chatted for 2 hours or so, I believe, before we gave each other our Skype addresses. I had to create mine in a quick hurry because I didn't have a fake girly Skype address that matched my fake name. We went on to chat almost every day just for fun. And even though I knew I was lying to her by being a girl, I still had some fun, but I really felt guilty for lying to her. And I knew we couldn't meet in real life, even though we lived close to each other. One day, she confessed that she was lying to me about something. That thing turned out to be that she was a guy as well. We kept in contact and we had a great time together, still, and we actually met each other once. But he died 2 years later, though. But still, good times. Next story. In my sophomore year of college, my friend Carrie, male 19, met a girl named Kelly in a chat room. They talked a lot and got close. One day, Kelly revealed that her boyfriend beat her up and broke her jaw. Carrie drove to a city a few hours away to rescue her and learned that Kelly was really Kenny. And Kenny tortured Carrie into giving up all of his passwords and then murdered him and left his corpse in a field. Then Kenny impersonated Carrie online for several days in an attempt to cover his tracks. He did a bad job though, and he got caught and unalived himself in jail before trial. I realize how this sounds with the names being K-E ending in Y, but it's a true story. You can Google it, and it really messed me up for a while. Next story. My ex-girlfriend tried catfishing me to test me. It took me about 30 seconds of looking through the profile before I realized that the name was her name backwards. The craziest thing is, she really thought it would work. That girl was bonkers. Next story. I was talking to a girl I met on Tinder, and while I have on my profile that I'm not interested in being anyone's third, she kept talking about the guy she was currently seeing, and how hot he was, and how I didn't want to F him with her. I eventually found her Facebook and his was a real Facebook, while hers consisted of 2 really fake-looking photos and no actual information. So, it became apparent that at that point, it was the guy just trying to get bi girls to sext with him. Next story. About 6 years ago, I found out my brother was a catfish. He had been catfishing this young man in the UK while being in America. He had fake pictures, a fake name, but his real phone number. The guy being catfished, we'll call him Lenny, would repeatedly call my brother and leave messages on our house phone. My brother and Lenny often sent each other packages of sweets. Lenny, he made the decision to come to America to visit since he's never been. My brother agreed, and on the day Lenny arrived in Texas, my brother told him the truth, but never actually met up with Lenny. Lenny tried all week trying to convince my brother to meet him, telling him he just wanted to know who he really was, but my brother never showed. Lenny called religiously every day for about a month trying to get my brother back. I think he really loved him. After that, I never heard from him again. Next story. About 10 years ago, I started chatting with a guy in one of the Yahoo chat rooms. We had only been chatting for a few weeks when suddenly he disappeared offline for about 2 weeks. I was so worried, but then his sister contacted me and told me he'd been in a terrible motorcycle accident. He was in ICU, but she kept in touch with me to let me know how he was. After about a month, he got back online and we talked every day. We traded pictures and eventually I got on webcam to say hi, and he couldn't do the same because of some issues with his computer. We talked like this for nearly 3 years. It was around this time that I realized his sister was actually him. It didn't matter though. I was besotted with him, and I mean totally head over heels. Then one day, he just disappeared. His profile was deleted, all of his accounts were gone, and I have not heard a single word from him since. I still have no idea who he or she really was, and it messed me up for a long time. I still think about it at times, and I would do anything to know the truth. Alright, y'all, so as somebody who has partaken in online gaming for more than half my life, oh boy, have I seen some catfishing in my day. But this particular story reminded me of one of my buddies, Matt, or MT was what we called him because of his username, but he just disappeared one day. I'd known him for over 10 years. I knew him from the Xbox 360 days, so you know it's been a while, all the way to the Xbox One days, and this was 4 years ago now, and he just disappeared one day, and he didn't have social media. I almost got him to make a kick one time, but he just kind of deleted his accounts. I tried looking up his buddies and asking if they knew anything about him, but he was kind of a private guy, and we just didn't have anything, so I don't know what happened to him. Maybe we could speculate, but really, we got nothing. That's a shame. I liked him. He would have been the last guy you would have thought to disappear and delete that, because he loved gaming. Maybe too much, and he quit? I don't know. But anyway, next story. So, not me, but my father-in-law. He lost his wife 7 years ago, and after a while was tired of having an empty house and nobody to talk to. He tried online dating, but went to a free website and got hooked. A lady who claimed she lived in Chicago started chatting him up. She was an international traveler for business. She had pictures, and she seemed friendly. They chatted for a few weeks and then made plans to meet after she came back from business, and he kept telling us some of the details about this amazing lady he met, but we didn't want to be too invasive, so didn't ask a lot of questions. Luckily for him, her trip back was a holiday. Thanksgiving weekend, and we all happened to be at his house. She was supposed to fly in on Saturday, and he kept going to his room in private to chat with her about the details of her trip. On Friday, he came down all sad and said she sent him a heartbreaking message. Her plane got stuck somewhere in Europe due to weather, forgot where, and while she was waiting, her purse was stolen. She had no phone, no credit cards, no ID, no tickets, etc. She needed him to send money so she could get back home, and she was scared and alone in a country she had never visited. If we hadn't been there, and he told me some of the details, which of course set off my bullcrap alarms, he would have sent her a couple of grand to get her back home. I explained to him the concept of catfishing, and he didn't believe me at first. I had him ask her some more details. How was she reaching him with no phone? She claimed she was borrowing laptops at the airport. How come she never spoke on the phone? She said she gets very shy on the phone and prefers using the dating site to chat. What is the flight numbers so we can track it coming to the USA? And she did provide one, but it was bunk and not stuck due to weather. When we called her out on it, she tried the emotional tactic and said she was shaking in sadness and betrayal that he couldn't trust her after she gave him her heart. And she kept going for emotional responses, but stopped responding with any attempts to get actual proof from her. And we stopped responding, and a day or two later she messaged him one last try and claimed a friend paid for a new ticket for her, but she still needed money, a lesser amount to pay for some sort of fine, or she would just be stuck there and could maybe go to jail. He wouldn't want her to have to go to jail, would he? But yeah, it sucked that it happened because he's a super trusting guy. Even a few weeks later, he wasn't certain that she wasn't real, despite the whole family telling him it was a scam. I even kind of think he sent her the money in the first part of the original ticket, and the family didn't get involved until the stolen purse part of the scam. Of course, she was most likely a he using stolen pictures online. I did an image search on one of the photos, but nothing came up. Moral of the story, though, if you have anyone over 50 in your life, make sure you explain to them about different types of internet scams, especially if they are into shopping, dating, meeting friends, etc. It's a whole different world than what they grew up with, and the scammers are getting very good at it. I know a few elderly people that have been scammed over the phone, but the internet brings a whole new level of scamming. Next story. I was probably 19, very bad with women, very into role-playing on things called MUXs. Think a role-play-centric all-text MMO. So, met a girl in one of the MUXs. She was a senior in high school. I had just graduated and we started hanging out online, which went to, let's call and talk about the plots we're running in, which became I love you in a couple of weeks. So there was a lot of fun. I scanned my junk, she scanned hers, we'd send it to each other. We'd sit on the phone and laugh about stuff until like 3 a.m. or whenever her dad would come in and tell her to hang up. She's the first girl I ever had phone sex with too. I still get a weird tingle when I see girls in videos using the bathtub to self-pleasure. This is all before camera phones, so all I had to go on was my imagination. Well, calls start slowing down. Then the letters stopped getting responded to, and eventually she just stopped talking to me altogether. And about then, I started putting the pieces together. How her pictures were always like some girl in a crowd, or some girl's school photos, or how all my mail came back returned to sender until she gave me a new, completely different address. The signs were all there. I was just willfully ignoring them. I think there probably was some feelings on her end. My theory is that she was a lot younger than she was claiming, and I was talking a lot of nonsense about her moving to my state so we could be together. I think she got scared, or her parents found out she was talking to an older man and she cut contact. And the romance, it seemed too directional. I liked making her laugh and making silly plans with her. She seemed to genuinely enjoy my humor and company, but again, she was telling me she was 17, and how hard is it to not laugh at 17 sometimes? So, if your name is Roshni, or if you pretend to be a girl named Roshni in like the 2000s, no hard feelings. Thanks for laying the groundwork and making my current relationship, which has a temporary long-distance aspect, a lot easier for me. And whenever I think about our imaginary son, Spaghetti Bucket, I smile and I wish you well. Alright, so not catfishing related, but kind of relevant. I had a school friend back in middle school, and she had a crush on me, but I didn't realize that until years later, as many men do. But she got an Xbox, I played Xbox, and then she went with one of my online buddies, Brandon. Well, Brandon, he's just like, he smells woman and he starts floating like a cartoon character sniffing a pie. Anyway, we're in middle school, Brandon's in high school or something like that. We game for a few days, Brandon comes in. Then like a week or 2 weeks into this, I'm not online, but they start gaming without me. And I come in and I check in on them the next day, and Brandon's like, "Oh, hey, me and Sarah are dating." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, we're gonna meet up sometime soon." And I'm like, "What?" Maybe Sarah was doing this to make me jealous. I don't know, but it was just so weird and out of left field, and it wasn't gonna work. It didn't work, and I don't know where Sarah is, and I didn't even like Brandon that much, but that was just such a left field thing. Anyway, next story. So, he claimed to be a US Marine, yet had an extravagant amount of free time to play MMORPGs. Someone here on Reddit offered to run his name through the USMC database, and he didn't exist. Well, someone by his name did, but they had been discharged in 1958 or something, whereas this guy claimed to be 21. Good ol' stolen valor. Next story. So, when I was a freshman in high school, I was big into Neopets, and I had a clique I ran with on the boards, and we chatted off-site as well. Two of those people were Shelby and Adam, same age as myself, more or less, and dating. Adam had a sister, Kelsey, I think, who was also in the clique. Well, it came to pass, as internet relationships do, that Shelby and Adam broke up. And Adam and I started talking/dating, air quotes. Shelby, she gave us her blessing. We shared pictures. He was typical emo-looking kid, which 14-year-old me loved. We talked on the phone only once or twice. I was very shy about it, so I didn't mind the lack of voice communication. At one point, he sent me a YouTube video of him and his friends. There wasn't much talking, and it was all pretty muffled, and it sounded like they were all speaking German. And later, eventually, Adam and I broke up. And it was after that that the big reveal came. There was no Adam. Kelsey had made him up and had been posing as him all along. I asked Shelby about it, and apparently she had found out when they had broken up too, but Kelsey had made her promise not to tell. Gee, thanks. TLDR is, Neopets is for good, clean fun, not dating. Next story. Okay, so I actually had this happen recently. I was using a dating app and started talking to this girl. She had 5 photos on there, 2 of her and 3 group photos. Nothing surprising for a girl on a dating website. So we agreed to grab coffee, and I arrived early and sat outside, and this girl walks up to me and says hello, introduces herself as the girl I was meeting, but did not look anything like her. And something was familiar about her, but I couldn't go and take out my phone to check, so I went ahead. We ordered coffee, and I thought about making a break for it right then and there when she went and put sugar in it, but decided to stay. So start talking, and we pick up on the conversations we were having online. But after about a half a cup, I had enough, and it wasn't going anywhere, so I made up some BS excuse and I left. Then, back in my car, I open up my phone to look at her profile again and figure out why she looked familiar. She was in the photos. She was one of the girls in the group, but she was using her friend as the main photo. Very weird. Sad part is that she wasn't terrible looking, boring though, but not as good looking as her friend. Girl was probably all kinds of crazy or something. Next story. I was talking to this girl initially from Twitter who was easily a 9 out of 10, one of the hottest girls I've ever seen. That was my first clue because the odds of her instantly going for an average guy like myself, whom she had never met, were very slim, especially as she had had a few followers showing interest. Eventually, there were loads of inconsistencies in the stuff she told me about herself. She was way too clingy for someone I had never met. I just put that down to me being different, i.e. not reciprocating any feelings, never even telling her how hot she was, etc. But she wanted to meet with me, and I decided against it after speaking to a friend who knew her in real life, and he told me she had a long-term boyfriend, despite her not having much experiences with guys, according to her. But then, I started hearing rumors that she had 2 accounts on Facebook, and one of them, the one that added me, could be a fake/decoy, etc. After that, I figured it was too much of a hassle to keep up with, and there were so many signs to avoid her, so I cut off all contact. Funnily enough, though, I read a blog post a few years later from the real girl who said that this girl had been impersonating her for the past 10 years, had been leading guys on, etc., and went really far with her charade to the point she seemed mentally unstable. So, bullet dodged, I guess. Next story. Met someone on OkCupid. He was moving from New York City to my city. Said he was a surgeon. That was my first red flag. I wondered why a successful surgeon was on a free dating website. We chatted for 2 weeks, but he didn't want to talk on the phone. Red flag number 2. At that point, I assumed he was a fake. Eventually, he deleted his profile, saying he couldn't wait to meet me in 3 weeks when he was scheduled to fly in for a weekend to find a condo. I reverse searched his picture and found another profile. Same story, but it said he was moving to Phoenix. Red flag number 3. At this point, I know he's fake now, but I'm having fun making him think I'm totally hooked. He gave me bad med advice when I sprained my ankle. Then he told me he had a foot fetish and he would be making sure I would get daily pedicures when I quit my job and move in with him. And the weekend he was supposed to fly in, his current almost former boss died and he couldn't make it. I sent him screenshots of his other profile and told him I knew all along and had just been effing with him. Good times. Next story. I talked to this guy, Sean, for months, probably close to a year. Then poof, gone. It sucked, but oh well. 6 months later, start talking to another guy with the same unusual middle name. He turns out to be Sean's ex-boyfriend, and about 80% of the stuff I knew about Sean was actually about him. He broke up with Sean 6 months before and took his phone back, and that's why he disappeared. Next story. Saw a guy, Redfish, with a cute profile picture on Grindr. Messaged him on the app, never expected a response, but he replied really quickly and was really eager to chat. He sent 2 pictures of his body, but I noticed that his hands were a lot bigger in one of them. I ignored it because my wiener was thinking, but then a random stranger, Catfish, messaged me on Grindr claiming to be Redfish's friend, and how they were really close and go to the same college. I responded politely, just making conversation. Redfish then asked me later that night asking how I found Catfish. I said I was alright, but I already knew the deal, so I just played along. I just wanted to see how long he could keep this up. I took a screenshot of the profile from Redfish's account and Google image searched it, and it was a ton of tumblers. Then, after a few days of talking to the both of them, and Redfish basically talking about Catfish the whole time, Redfish's account blocked me. So I messaged Catfish to say, hey, what's up with Redfish? Why did he block me? And Catfish says he knows nothing about that, and says he'll ask. Then comes back and says, Redfish won't tell him why. Right. Then I just reply, 1 fish, 2 fish, Redfish, Catfish. It's lame, I know, but I really like Dr. Seuss. But then, Catfish types one mother of a story of how he's shocked that I would even think he would do that to someone, and that he would never because he's been a victim of catfishing before, to the extent of someone stalking him and having them take out a restraining order. I don't believe it for a second because Catfish is fat and not very attractive in general. Sorry if I sound judgmental, but anyway, I then told him how I Googled the profile picture, and he confessed to all of it. He kept making some excuse about how he was tired of being on the sidelines, and he just wanted to not be ignored. The whole time he just kept making excuses for his behavior, but not once feeling like he had done something wrong. Next story. My best friend's father found out when my friend told him. He was in love, but her photos were too perfect. So my friend got some proof together and broke the news to him. He took it well. Then for me, I was catfished on a dating website. She was way too hot to be talking to someone like me, and sure enough, she was a model in a relationship. Bummer. Next story. This might be a little late, but I actually unintentionally catfished someone. I was playing League of Legends, and this guy added me after we played a game. His English was broken, but I didn't think much of it, and we started to duo together. We did really well, but strangely, he kept referring to me as a she. Again, didn't think twice about it, and I just kept playing with him. But eventually, he started to get real creepy and told me all of these things about him. We found out that there was a significant time difference between us, but he would log on at the most ridiculous times just for him to play with me, and started to become a white knight. Whenever anyone would trash talk me, which is pretty normal, he would vehemently defend me and start fights with other team members, opposing players, and whatever. Shortly after that, he would start saying, "Good night, BB," which I thought was bye-bye. So I would say, "Haha, good night, BB," back to him. Then he'd send me hearts like the less than 3, and I thought we were guys being guys, so I would jokingly message the heart back to him. Eventually, he started calling me his girlfriend when he was defending me, and I realized he full-on thought I was a female the entire time. I messaged him after the game and was like, "Hey, dude, I'm a guy." And then he went on a rampage. He started cussing me out, and by the end of it, the only reason he thought I was female was because of my username, and because I used proper grammar and spelling. Fellas, is it gay to use proper grammar and spelling? Please discuss in the comments. I remember one time I accidentally catfished someone. It was on Facebook, like way back in the middle school days, and some person just added me. I guess there was some other Kevin with my name or something like that. I don't know. But this lady added me, and she was kind of cute, and I didn't really know her, and I'll just accept anybody's friend request. So I would get tagged in photos and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. I didn't really care or pay attention. Then one day I get tagged in another photo, and the lady's like, "Kevin, how old are you?" And I'm like, "I'm 12 or 14 or whatever." And she's like, "You look like a grown man." And I didn't realize that I was tagged in the photo. I thought she just meant like the actual me, and I felt really hurt and offended by that for a week. And then way later did I realize, oh wait, she was talking about the photo, and this woman doesn't even know the real me, and I've never met her in real life. So I thought that was really funny because she would interact with my posts a bit. But anyway, next story. So I met this Welsh girl on 4chan that was into a lot of the same bands as I was, liked the same comedians as I did, and shared a lot of my political views. She was effing awesome, and we stayed up all night talking about anything and everything. We went on to spend a good 68 hours almost every single day, pretty much constantly talking for the next 3 months. She was amazing, funny as hell, had really interesting opinions on a lot of things, introduced me to a ton of new music and films, and was just generally a really lovely person. As for me, I was incredibly depressed at the time and had just dropped out of college the year prior due to severe, ever-increasing anxiety and an inability to function in public. She was the only person I had ever felt genuinely comfortable talking to, and I was completely fascinated by her. I looked forward to waking up every day just because I enjoyed her company. We'd stay up all night talking and watching TV shows, and I had genuinely started to fall for her. Then one night she says goodnight, we'll talk tomorrow like normal. I headed off to bed. The next day, she didn't come online. A few days went by and I hadn't heard from her at all, and I started to get really worried. I started checking the news and obituaries in her town, but found nothing. I went a little bit mental at this point, and I couldn't eat or sleep properly for weeks on end. I had no idea what the F was going on. I genuinely thought I might have completely made the whole thing up and that I was seriously mentally unwell. I thought of her and what could have possibly happened every single day. The anxiety and stress this caused me actually made me physically and mentally ill. This went on for months, and I got worse and worse, eventually leading to a full-blown nervous breakdown. Not going to go into the details on that one, but eventually I became functional again. And a few months down the line, I decided to look into her a little further to see if I could figure out what had happened and get some closure. I came across a girl on a social media website whose pictures she had stolen, and from there, I began to unravel everything. Now these days, I'm actually doing fairly well, and now I feel a lot healthier than I have in a long time. A long, long time. It's weird, but I still think of her from time to time. Despite knowing full well it was either a guy or someone entirely different to the pictures, I still get quite sad knowing I'll never be able to talk to them again. And despite it really effing me up for a long time, I'm better for it. and I just hope that they're doing okay too. Next story. I dated this woman for a few months who claimed she was a doctor. I thought cool and just went with it. I caught on by her continuously talking about how she was going to buy a car. She had claimed she sold her car before moving, claiming she was going to buy me random things, claiming she was going to take me to Vegas, etc., and never delivered on anything. I had suspicions for a while, but what finally provided evidence was looking her up in medical registries. She wasn't listed anywhere. I confronted her, and she kept trying to make some lame excuse for anything I asked about, and haven't talked to her since. Next story. I had a friend back in high school who told us this story a week after it happened at a graduation party. So he had been chatting with this girl from Florida for 3 years, decides to finally go and visit her for a week after our high school graduation. So he takes a plane down and she was going to pick him up at the airport. He arrives and is instead greeted by her mother, who says her daughter is waiting for him back at the house. So he gets his bags and heads for the car with her. Notices a guy sitting in the backseat around his age. Funny, he didn't remember anything about her having a brother, and he starts getting a little weirded out at this point. They finally arrive at the house. No girl in sight. He gets angry and has the mother spill the beans. Turns out this lady was using her niece's pictures to talk with them. How he didn't realize sooner, I don't know. Maybe they never talked on the phone, or maybe her voice sounded young. Anyways, he immediately left this lady and her son and spent the night at a hotel and had his parents pay for a plane ticket back home the next day. Next story. Well, I catfished a girl once. Does that count? It was probably the most evil thing I've ever done. I was young at the time and extremely lonely and a broke college student. She was sweet and loving and made me feel like my life was worth living. We went in a Napster chat room. Yeah, you read that right. And we just started chatting and immediately hit it off. At the time, I'd never even used AIM or ICQ or any IM program, but I made an account just so I could keep chatting with her. She filled a massive hole in my heart and made me feel that at least somebody cared. But to keep her interest, I had to reinvent this wealthy, interesting persona who lived in Manhattan, New York City. Over time, the lies just kept getting ever more elaborate and absurd. This went on for months. I still feel a huge amount of remorse about the whole episode to this day. Eventually, I felt compelled to tell her the truth. By that point, she'd already figured it out on her own and was just waiting for me to fess up. Except at the time, I didn't know it. And we used to chat in the mornings before either of us had to go off to our respective days. One morning in, I want to say November or December of 2001, I finally told her the truth about me, in complete detail. I even got a cam so she could see me and hear me talk IRL, so she'd be able to see and hear and verify everything, and know that I didn't want to lie to her anymore about anything else. And I think she realized how sorry I was and that I never meant to hurt her. She forgave me almost immediately, and although I know I still hurt her, we became even closer friends after I told her the truth and stayed that way for years. We started regularly chatting on camera. I even visited her in December of 2002. Eventually, we lost contact, but years later we reconnected on Facebook and then lost contact again. And that's when I finally ditched Facebook. But wherever you are, CSS, I hope you're happy and you're well. Next story. I was in my early 20s at the time and met a girl on one of the chat boards. She was 19 or so and was attractive. She had several pictures available, all of which were candid shots and none of the stereotypical model-like photos, so I tended to believe it was legit. After a while, she started talking on the phone and it progressed into a casual relationship, and inevitably led to many discussions about sex and fantasies and even borderline phone sex. The thing is, she lived in the same city as me, so after a month or so I was saying, hey, we need to meet or this isn't going anywhere. So she finally gives me her address and tells me to come over the next day. I show up, and it is this very sketchy part of town. It is near the penitentiary, and the house probably should have been condemned a few years prior. I start to realize this is a bad idea, but I wanted to see it through. And there was a girl about the same age sitting out front of the house. She knew who I was and said she was the girl's friend and that she would be back soon, so we should just wait for her. This other girl was nice enough, but was very overweight. She probably had an extra 40 pounds on her frame and didn't resemble the girl in the photos at all. Well, soon enough, she gets me into the house and up into the bedroom, and she is talking to me like she is my friend and knows me, etc., etc. I think she was trying to make a move on me, but the entire time I was in horror due to this house. I mean, the place was disgusting. There was garbage everywhere. The bed was just a stained mattress with a partial sheet covering it. There was no place to sit aside from the floor. The place smelled like old ashtrays. In the middle of summer there was no AC, so it was stuffy and hot. However, I still didn't think it was the same girl because I just didn't recognize the voice as being the same. Eventually, it became clear the girl I was expecting wasn't going to show. So I said goodbye, and I left. Then she contacted me on the phone later and had some sad excuse. She then went out of her way to tell me to not get her confused with her friend because their voices sound a lot alike. And then she made a little comment about her friend being overweight, to which I responded like, yeah, she was a fatty. And she tried to brush it off, but you could tell she was offended. Then, eventually, I figured things out and she denied it, but we stopped talking. A few months go by and she contacts me and says she is dating some guy, I suppose in an attempt to make me jealous. I wasn't. Then a month or so later, she calls me to tell me she is pregnant and had all of this drama. But I just stopped answering her calls and her emails, and they were just more excuses trying to explain why we never met. The whole thing was just odd, and I can't believe it took me so long to see the warning signs. A few years later, the house she was living in was torn down by the city, and it's now an empty lot. I have no idea whatever happened to her. Next story. I officiated the in-game wedding on EverQuest of a good friend, virtual, and I had played with him since beta, and we were quite close on aim. This is like over 1997 to 2002 or so. We were pretty much the most decked-out monks on our server, and our split pulling was unrivaled. We were able to clear the best dungeons easier and faster than other guild raid groups because we were so in sync. Continuing, over the years, like 2 years, he's really involved with this one cleric chick, a high elf. They exchanged photos, had phone calls, etc. Then, around year 3, we had this big roleplay event. The GMs even sent me a couple of items to dress in and read wedding vows. We were pretty well known on the server, having won best of the best tournaments and such. Over 200 people crammed into West Commons to attend the wedding. And then, a few weeks later, it turns out she, or he, was arrested for CP. He was 400 plus pounds, a basement dweller in Georgia. The FBI got in touch with my buddy after finding correspondence in the big guy's home. Oh man, let me tell you guys, I had a buddy, actually 2 buddies, but really just one, crash a Halo 3 wedding one time. That was insane. Spartan laser, the bride, fusion coals everywhere, they left. And then they crashed another wedding on Halo Reach. For a friend, some guy named Trent Donovich, big game developer. Yeah, I can't swear. They freaking crashed his wedding. They crashed 2 Halo weddings. Insane stuff. Anyway, next story. Well, here's my stupid story. I met this girl on World of Warcraft back in vanilla days. We RP'd together, quested, whatnot. Well, she gave me her phone number. Her name was Alex, so off and on we talked. Then we kinda just stopped. But last year we started talking again. And well, I was interested, of course. So after a year of us kinda dating, she was sending pictures of who I thought was her, but boy was I wrong. So me being a dude though, I eventually ask for nudes. She sends me some pictures of some random girl online. Go figure, I was like, okay, she's nervous. Well, then when I was scrolling on Instagram and saw a picture that she sent me, it's some Instagram famous girl. I felt effing stupid. I called her out, she fought it, I fought harder. She finally gave up. Her name wasn't even Alex. Looked like a troll too. I was planning on paying to see her in a few weeks from then. So yeah, Jordan, if you read this, F you. Next story. It was back in the days of RuneScape. I seriously doubt there was a preteen in existence who had a RuneScape account and hadn't been catfished or at least experienced an attempt. Well, I caught them because it was obvious. Asking for free crap, being overly girly, etc. And because I have been usually unintentionally catfishing people ever since video games with online capabilities gave you the ability to choose a female avatar. Next story. It wasn't me, but my best friend who was being catfished. We were hanging out and he told me about this guy he had been talking to for a while and was now dating. He told me this ridiculously long, convoluted story about his boyfriend's life, and then he told me that he had never listened to his voice. That gave me a pretty bad feeling. Then, after some Google image searching, we discovered that my buddy's boyfriend was fake, and so were about a half dozen other people that were somehow related to him. It was pretty crazy. The amount of detail that whoever was catfishing my friend put into the farce was astounding. Good thing is that I got my friend out of there just in time. Next story. Probably not exactly what you're looking for, but I think I accidentally catfished someone when I was younger. It might not have counted as catfishing, I don't know, you be the judges, but I was 13 and had signed up for an IMDb username. I think you had to be 18 or something because I normally put at least close to my real age if I could. Well, I hung around the forums of movies and shows I really liked and would respond to some things people said every now and then. One night, a guy messaged me and started chatting, and I thought he just liked the same show as me, so I thought it was cool. Like the 5th or 6th message, he asked me how old I was, and I quickly responded, 13. I didn't hear back from him again, and I wish I could apologize and tell him I wasn't trying to set him up for Chris Hansen to show up at his house. I swearsy for realsies. Next story. My husband was catfished before he and I started dating. He had met a girl on MySpace who was very hot, and he agreed to meet up with her at the mall one day. I guess he described his car or something because she met him out in the parking lot and hopped in the truck and introduced herself, and he thought it was a joke. She either used very flattering angles or else the pictures she'd posted weren't even her. It's important to understand that my husband doesn't expect women to be solid 10 swimsuit models. I mean, if you're clean and mostly fit, he'll probably consider you to be moderately attractive. But for this girl, he couldn't find one redeeming quality physically. She was grotesque and apparently really weird and quite stupid as well. Still, my husband being who he is, he didn't want to hurt her feelings. He walked around the mall with her for about 30 minutes before he texted a friend to call him and then make up a frantic story about his friend's car being stolen and needing to go pick him up. He apologized profusely but blocked her on MySpace the second he got home, and he never tried to date online ever again. I teased him for a while, we were friends back then, and told him she might end up being really nice if he gave her a chance, but he wasn't interested. He still feels bad about being shallow, but I snagged him a while later, so I'm not too worried about it. Next story. When I was 15 and young and with no self-esteem, I took to devoting all of my time to playing World of Warcraft. I met this cool guy on there, and my young brain convinced me I was in love with him. The catch of all catches? He was 21, with 2 sons and still living with his ex. And yet I ignored all of that and Skyped with him constantly as he boosted my self-esteem and told me I was beautiful, even though I knew I wasn't. Then, one day, he doesn't sign on to game or to Skype. Days pass, weeks pass, and I'm getting desperate. I couldn't even vent to anyone. I had to keep it a secret. Then one day, he signed back on and completely changed. He told me he got into a car accident and couldn't remember anything. Not even me. I stuck with him, trying to re-jog his memory. In the end, his ex was trying to rekindle the relationship, and she decides she wants to play World of Warcraft with him, so he can't talk to me when she's watching. After a few weeks of that, he blocked me on everything, and I became a manic mess. To this day, I can't figure out what changed, but it messed me up for a long time. I think 21-year-old me still doesn't want to believe that it was all a lie, and he will unfortunately always be my first love. Next story. Minorly relevant, but I unintentionally catfished a guild. I played as a female avatar, pre-voice chat, and I was very chatty in the various text channels. Well, years later, and I realized that everyone assumed I was a female, even other females in the guild, and I had thought I was just popular, but there was this weird gravitation towards me because of it. When I corrected someone and finally literally said that I wasn't a female, the distance between everyone else and me was palpable, like I was pulling some grand hoax. Shrug. Next story. Back in the MySpace days, I ended up getting close with a beautiful girl that I thought was known by my mutual friends. We talked every day, all day, and then she told me she had feelings. I would have dropped everything to be with this girl. Then I get a message from another girl who was the actual girl, whose pictures had been stolen, holding proof that the person I'd been talking to was lying. The actual girl was sweet and sympathetic, but obviously wasn't interested. It was tough at first because I felt a bond with her that didn't actually exist. I confronted the catfisher and she eventually owned up, sent real pictures and said that everything else was real, the feelings and whatnot. She wasn't unattractive either, so if she'd have just been honest, who knows? But I couldn't get past that, and I cut contact. Next story. A few years ago, after a big breakup, I decided to try the online dating scene. I eventually matched with a pretty hot girl called Corina, who gave me her Facebook, and she said she couldn't chat on the dating website, so naturally, I added her, but didn't actually strike up any conversation. Just lurked to see what kind of person she was. She was very into playing Call of Duty, so I added her on there and sometimes joined her game. She was always playing with another guy, though, called Hector, so I was hesitant to butt in and start chatting, but after a while, I joined their party. Found that they had some pretty fun chats, so started talking to them. After a few months of playing COD, we were all good friends, and I used to chat to Karina on the phone a lot and generally flirt, etc. We all lived in London, so we kept saying we should meet up, but plans, they always fell through. Turns out, Karina had a long-term illness and was in and out of the hospital a lot, and used to send us photos of her scars and all the equipment she was hooked up to. It also turned out she had a boyfriend, a weird South African dude called Chris who used to join our Call of Duty games and sucked, and him and Karina would bicker and fight, etc. and he was generally a douche, telling her he loved her all the time. As for me, I had a sneaking suspicion that he was from the same dating website Hector and I used. Had never actually met her. He'd just taken the whole thing a bit too far, and she seemed fed up with it. About 4 months later, after this whole thing started, still hadn't met up, but still flirting, etc., Karina was in hospital again. Then, as I was waking up for work one morning, she texted me something like, "I drank a bottle of vodka. I think I'm going to die. Love you." And I replied jokingly, as she had a pretty sick sense of humor. But when I got home from work that day, I went on her Facebook to find tons of RIP messages. Hector had noticed too, and we were totally blown away. She had died. I was pretty shaken up, but felt weird as she was just really a voice on the phone, but also an actual friend. A few months after that, her friend Liz messaged us to play some Call of Duty as a memorial to Karina. So Hector and I started playing with her quite regularly. She was pretty good too, but didn't have a microphone. She also kept wanting to meet up, also told me she liked me, but those plans kept falling through too. Eventually, I got fed up and I stopped playing Xbox with them for a couple of months. Then, when I decided to jump on again, I found her and Hector in a party as usual, so I joined to say hi, and Liz had gotten herself a microphone and we all chatted away. She actually sounded similar to Karina, same humor and jokes, etc., which I thought was odd but shrugged it off because Karina was dead. But still though, my gut feeling got the best of me, and I decided to assure myself that I wasn't just crazy. I scoured the internet for other references to these girls, but I couldn't find anything. They each had hundreds of friends and family on Facebook who they interacted with all the time, so it would have been strange to think it was someone pretending. I found nothing that could allay my suspicions, and I was getting tired of it, so as a last-ditch attempt, I threw some of Karina and Liz's photos into Google image search. Nothing until bam! One of Karina's hospital photos matched with an American girl's blog about having cystic fibrosis. Several photos of this blog were ones Karina had sent me. I was onto something, so I kept searching images until, bam! One of Liz's photos directly matched with a girl from Ohio. I'm from the UK. And after browsing her profile in a bit of astonishment, I checked her friends, and there was Karina too. Not only Karina, but between the Ohio girls, there were tons of Liz and Karina's friends and family, but the real people. So after a long time of checking all of this, it was clear that this one girl had created hundreds of Facebook profiles with stolen photos of all of these people and made them all interact. Pretty arduous task, but hey, some people get bored, I guess. I told Hector, but we kept it quiet for a while, but I surveyed Liz's activity and matched it with the Ohio girl's activity, just to be sure. Eventually, Hector ended up blowing our cover, and she started deleting everything. I texted her, asking for an explanation, and after denying it for a while, she came clean. And I wasn't that pissed off about the deception. I was more so intrigued as to why someone would go to such lengths to do this without any apparent gain to themselves. Her story was that she was actually quite ill, bored, and had few friends. Not sure whether that's true, but I didn't really get much more info after that. She wouldn't meet me in person, and we just fell out of contact, and she blocked me on most platforms. Then I kept an eye on her Xbox gamer tag though, and she recently catfished another guy by using a couple of girls, one of whom also had cystic fibrosis. I feel bad for not warning them, but I did not want to get involved with all of that again. Found a reference to another CF sufferer catfishing a guy into getting married online a few years before my time, so that was probably her too, going by the names that she used. Anyways, that's my long, sorry story about my first online dating experience, and the Moriarty to my Sherlock. Next story. I had 3 female roommates when I was in my mid-20s. I'm male, 47 now. These women were far from attractive and extremely petty, bitter, nasty women. I wished I'd known that before I moved in, but I have a whole Reddit story about that year of hell. I will write it down someday. But anyway, this was during the AOL IM thing, and they would hold the phone hostage for hours while they were chatting with hot guys. Well, anyway, one was 25 and looked 60, and I swear to God she just had this aged face and the voice of a 60-year-old that smoked Marlboros her whole life. The second was just plain ugly, with the personality to match. She was also very whiny and mean. She moved in after I did and was not on the lease and did not pay rent, which is another story. And the third was very attractive. In high school. Then she was about 24 and gained about 100 pounds, but still thought she was attractive to guys. And so they spent all day on a website chatting with these guys that they met. They talked them into meeting them at local bars for a drink. They were excited, and I was genuinely happy for them. I asked if they needed me to go in case they were not what they said they were. Well, the nasty roommate screamed at me saying I don't know what I'm talking about, and I wouldn't understand her because I was a loser. All right, well, okay, I'm going out to have fun, I said, and I went to take a shower. About 45 minutes later, they returned home, dejected. I asked what was wrong, and the nasty one actually apologized to me. She went on to say that the pictures they showed them were not them. In fact, one was really old, the other really ugly, and the third really fat. It was their perfect match, yet they couldn't face that reality. They allowed these guys to buy them a drink and then left. These girls drove 3 hours to meet them, and they left them. They're perfect matches at the bar. I offered my sympathy and left before I burst out laughing. Next story. Well, when I was approached by a little person while waiting for my date from OkCupid asking if I was username disclaimer unnecessary, I caught on pretty damn quick, and in none of his photos did he have any of the facial features usually associated with dwarfism, and it was not something he felt he should bring up or mention before meeting me. And because I am an a-hole, I lied and said my username was XYZ, and I was waiting for friends. The next group of girls that I walked into the bar, I immediately went to and said, "Play along and this round is on me," and pretended they were who I was waiting for. I snuck out a few minutes later and sent him a message saying something had come up and I wasn't going to make it this time. I'm an a-hole, I know, but not that big of an a-hole to make him wait around thinking he's being stood up. He was a nice guy, but geez, I don't know, I just think that was something that should have been mentioned in passing even. Alright, here's my mindset. If you're not attracted to your partner, you're not attracted to your partner. You can't fake it, and just do yourself and do them a favor too, and just don't go along with it. Don't make it last any longer than it has to be for their sakes. If somebody looks like they don't groom themselves, you're not being superficial. If someone lies about their appearance, you just have preferences. Just don't be, too picky about it. He should have mentioned that. That's my opinion. Lord knows I've run into some women whose photos are way too old. But as I've mentioned, I have quite a few stories. I told some during this video. Had friends get catfished. The whole group got catfished by one friend who was using photos that weren't of her. And additionally, she was just being annoying and kind of an attention seeker gradually over time. So we just got tired of her. And that was the final straw, just knowing that she lied to us. So we got rid of her. And then a few years later, I caught up with her, we were talking, and she kind of apologized and said I was at a low point, self-conscious. So I used photos of someone else, but I'm trying to improve my self-esteem now, and her profile picture at the time was an actual photo of herself, and she wasn't a bad-looking person either, so I was happy for her, and we chat every now and then, so good for her. But anyway, guys, we are at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting, have a really good day, and bye-bye!